Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com. Today, I'm taking your questions on engine oil, mobile mechanics, fuel, and more. This is episode 172 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. All right, before I tell you how to get a question on a show like this and talk about the sponsor of the day, I want to remind you guys really quick that the premium membership is coming very, very soon. We're in the testing phase of it right now. I'm doing the back stuff to try and get it looking cool and build it up. Ben's helping me out a ton to get it all nailed down so I can have it working perfectly for you guys, because the last thing I want to do is launch this and have it crash and then everybody's mad at me. So for those of you that are interested, hang tight. Feel free to email me. I can put you on a list to give you guys the first heads up that it's coming. The folks on the email list for the blog will get notified first, then everybody will know. There'll be a YouTube video about it and everything. And if you're not interested, well, that's just fine too. I don't have a problem with that, but there was a lot of you guys that were interested in it. Remember, the first 100 people are going to get something extra special from me, so that'll be really cool. And then down the road, we'll do some other fun stuff with it as well. But in order to get a question on a show like this, make sure that you email me, charles@humblemechanic.com. Put question for Charles in the subject, ask the question, mash the enter button, give me the details, which is everybody did today, so thank you guys very much for that. Also, if you don't see your question on a show like this, be sure to check out the quick videos playlist on YouTube. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. All right, with all that wrapped up, let's get into your questions. First one comes from Daniel. Does brand of motor oil matter? I change the oil every 3,000 miles on my 98 Silverado with 180,000 miles. Is there a difference in quality between Pennzoil and Quaker State? I noticed the conventional Pennzoil oil changes cost close to $50, when standard house brand Quaker State costs about $20 for the same oil change. Does brand of oil matter if you change the oil regular? Bonus question, does high mileage versus regular oil matter in high mileage vehicles? Thanks, and I enjoy all your videos, especially the ones and tips or discussions about your industry. Okay, so something I have learned about engine oil or motor oil, whichever you want to call it, I don't really care. If we're going to get upset about calling it one way or the other, then get upset, but I don't really care. Is people have this very, very strange, to me anyway, affinity for engine oil. Kind of like the Ford versus Chevy versus Mopar thing. Like, you have your brand and that's what you use. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. Here's the truth. You need to make sure that you're following what the owner's manual says on your car. You need to worry about the weight, right? Is it 530, 540, 1040, 020, whatever. You need to make sure that's correct. Then you need to make sure that it meets the spec. So like for my Passat, it's 502. For the common rail diesels, it's 50700. You need to make sure that your oil meets those specs. Once you get past that, it's all about the additive packages in the oil. Does it have a little bit more detergent? Does it have a little bit more protectant? All that kind of stuff. And that stuff can matter. Does it matter so much brand to brand? Well, maybe. I used Castrol for years in my Passat. Then I switched to Pennzoil. Now that's what I use. Before that, in my Integra, I used Mobil 1 because I thought Mobil 1 was, the greatest oil on the planet. Nothing could ever be better with it. And you know what I found? That none of it really mattered because of exactly what you said. I changed the oil when I was supposed to. So if you're changing the oil when you're supposed to, you're meeting the spec that your vehicle's recommended for, the weight that it's recommended, then brand doesn't really get critical. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that Silverado probably doesn't require synthetic. Now, if you're talking a brand new BMW high test engine, okay, now we might be getting into places where engine oil does really matter. If we're talking Ferrari engines, engine oil brand may actually really make a difference, but on most of our cars, it's not as big of a deal as I think a lot of people make it out to be. You do need a good quality oil. You do need to make sure you're using something that does have the spec that you need. But when it comes to brand, Pennzoil versus Quaker State, I think they're made by the same company anyway, so they're probably largely the same. It's just the little sprinkle of additives that they put in it that makes the bit of difference. So you're changing it every 3,000 miles. I wouldn't get super sad about it either way. I would probably do the cheaper oil change too. And as far as high mileage versus not, high mileage probably has some extra additives in it that may condition seals. It may help prolong the engine life. I personally have not done that testing to prove whether that's the case or not. So if it's not anymore, run it. It's probably not going to hurt. See if anything's different when you're done. Beyond that, man, just change the oil and you'll be fine. It's not as hard as I think a lot of people make it out to be. There are probably some engine oils that I would never use in my car. I wouldn't probably go to the gas station and use the bottle that just says engine oil on it. Well, it actually says motor oil on it. Probably would stay away from that. All right, this is an interesting one from Solomon. It says, hey Charles, I recently lost my job and I've seriously been considering packing the back of my R32 with tools, hitting the road to see what kind of living I could make. Hey, travel is fun. I have a fairly good idea of what it would take. Would love to hear your take on the subject. Have a great Thanksgiving. Solomon, this is, first of all, I'm sorry you lost your job, but this could probably be the coolest thing that's ever happened to you. So I actually messaged Solomon back because I wanted to understand exactly what he was talking about. And he's actually talking about taking his toolbox, putting it in the back of his car, and driving across country, fixing cars in order to finance a trip across country. I think this is awesome. Sure, there's a million negatives, dude. There's a million negatives. You know, how are you going to get business? What happens if you don't have any work? What about parts? Where are you going to be working on these cars? All of that stuff plays into it. But look, this could be amazing. This could work fantastic. You could post ads on Craigslist saying, hey, I'm going to be in this area for 5 days. Anybody needs their car fixed, here's my rates. Local Facebook groups to that area. Vortex, you know, whatever. He didn't say if you worked on Volkswagens or not. Whatever that brand's forum is. Hey guys, I'm going to be doing this. Anybody want to do, you know, something to their car? Schedule meetups and hangouts and cruises, all that kind of stuff, man. And it's going to be really hard, right? That's going to be really challenging. I might see if I could like pre-schedule stuff a week or two in advance, if that was even an option. But I think this is just the coolest idea. Load your toolbox up, drive across country. Hopefully you have some money saved up and you could finance this trip without making any money, because what I would hate for you to do is get halfway across the country and run out of money, not have any gas, and no one in, you know, Nowheresville, Oklahoma wants to have their Volkswagen fixed. So I would probably budget to pay for the trip anyway without having to fix cars. But dude, I think this is cool. I would love to hear what everybody else thinks about this. You know, don't beat Solomon up for having a creative, different idea. If you don't think he should do it, be nice about it. Otherwise, I'll just delete your comment. But any advice for Solomon on doing this, I think would really help him out. And again, I think this is just, it's so different. It's so cool. And I think it's definitely, dude, I think it's definitely worth a shot. All right, next one didn't give me your name, so I'm gonna call you KG, which is what your email was. Hey Charles, I just stumbled on your channel here recently and I love it. Thank you. I really like the fact you discuss topics that aren't normally talked about. I have a couple of questions for you if you don't mind. Do you have any shows discussing the importance of using good fuel and what problems using low quality fuel causes? And question 2, snuck a bonus one in. I watched a show about the top problems with the TSI motor. With all things considered, would you consider it a good motor? I'm interested in buying a Mark 6 GTI. Thanks in advance for all your help. Keep up the good work. Okay, so 2 good questions. As far as fuel goes, the best show that I would say to watch would be about the carbon buildup that I did over a year ago now. I'll link that up so that you can just watch that one. There's a lot of good fuel information. I've also done other shows specifically about fuel quality that I will dig up and I will link as well. Basically, I'm not as hard on fuel and fuel quality as I am on oil and oil quality. Oil, you gotta use what the owner's book says. No doubt about it. You can cause damage to your engine if you don't. When it comes to fuel, you might have a problem, right? You might not get as good a fuel economy. You might not have as much butt dyno horsepower. You might get more carbon buildup. Then again, you really may not. So I'm not as hardcore on fuel as I am on oil, but watch those 2 other shows that I'll link up for you to really get a better understanding of that. I use mid-grade in my Passat, use mid-grade in the Tiguan. Both say they require premium. Never had an issue with either one of them. So if that tells you anything, then there you go. Now, if you're just like the oil, if you're driving around in a Ferrari, you put the right fuel in it. That's what you do. But You also don't squabble over like 20 cents extra when you're driving around a $300,000 car. Or maybe you do. I don't know. I don't drive one, so, but not as hardcore on fuel as I am on oil. When it comes to your second question about the TSI, I'll also link that video up if anybody wants to check that out. It's a hard question because there are a lot of issues with the TSI engine. You know, camshaft, tensioners, oiling issues, carbon buildup, intake manifolds, rear main seals, turbochargers, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff. Oil leaks. Oil leaks has become one that's actually become rather significant for us. Yeah, it has all those things. So would I consider it a great engine? Probably not great. Would I consider it a fair engine? Yeah, probably. The oil leak thing, it happens. That's not a TSI exclusive. It's not a Volkswagen exclusive. All engines have the potential to develop oil leaks. Some have more than others, and some don't. So I don't hate on the oil leak one. The rear main seal one, just, it's disappointing really, because one of our couple of things for years was at least we don't have rear main seal problems, and then that went away and now we do. So I was really disappointed in that. The intake manifold sucks. There's warranty extensions, which is good, but that's just kind of a pain in the butt. It's not super hard to replace. It's not super expensive of a part. I think part of the carbon buildup is leading to maybe faster failure rates on intake manifolds, because most all of them actually have gummy carbon in the runner, so that probably doesn't help either. The ones that really make me uncomfortable is the oiling issues and the timing chain adjuster issues. The oil issues one, I can't say with undoubted certainty that it is because of a 10,000 mile oil change interval, but boy do I hate a 10,000 mile oil change interval. If I owned one of these cars, I would change it every 5,000 miles with synthetic recommended oil. No question about it. I don't think that that helps anybody having that 10K service, other than in the overall cost of ownership, it goes way down. Now, we can argue the oil can hold up, we can argue the filter can hold up, but look, most people don't check the oil in their car. So even if 5 quarts of oil can hold up for 10,000 miles, an engine that is requiring 5 quarts, running on 3 quarts is not. So I don't really want to even bark up that tree. I just don't think 10K is the right choice. So if you buy this, do it every 5. If you get a used one, which you said you're getting Mark 6, so I don't think there's a whole lot of new ones out there. You want to check the timing chain tensioner for sure. If it hasn't been replaced, get it replaced. You'll probably need the bridge that goes between the 2 cams, because the little screen came out of it. If you're doing all that, it's worth maybe checking, if that screen is missing anyway, it's worth checking the bearings of the camshafts. So, you know, it's on that teetering of like not a bad engine and like, I might kind of stay away from it, but it all depends on how the car was loved during its life. If it was poorly maintained, no way. If it was well maintained, go for it. We just had a guy, his GTI has over 200,000 miles. His timing chain tensioner just broke like a month ago. So they can last if you take care of them, but if they're like averagely maintained to poorly maintained, I'd run. Forget about it. I wouldn't do it. All right, next one comes from Thomas. What would you recommend to prevent shuddering in a DSG from a complete stop? I have a new Mark 7 GTI with a DSG with about 4,000 miles. I love the car and it's my favorite car that I've ever had. My question is regarding the shuddering I get when I'm driving the car from a stop forward. I'm pretty sure the DSG goes into neutral when at a complete stop, and when you lift your foot off the brake and move it to the gas pedal, it feels like it is a shudder, like the clutch slipping or meshing abruptly. I always wait about half a second to a second for the clutch to engage before I add throttle as well. It only does this when coming from a stop, and the rest of the gear changes are perfect. I feel like this is a normal operation for the car, but I want to ensure longevity of the DSG and expensive clutch packs too. Any advice would be great. Love watching your videos on YouTube and appreciate what you do. Thanks for reading, Thomas. Okay, so I haven't really noticed on the Mark 7s this DSG hiccup. Now, I'll be very fair to you about this though. When I experience a DSG hiccup, I'm expecting it to be like the older generation DSG and the Mark 5s, the Passat and the EOS. Those, it was like no shift, no shift, no shift, bang. and it would go into gear, or it would be in first and it would kind of shift like 3 times is what it felt like going into second, which I think typically was something in that mech unit just not being happy. We never got like the breakdown of what actually was failing inside those mech units. I have one I should do a fail parts video on. So what I would recommend first is I would recommend that you take it in and get it looked at. With only 4K, it might be normal, but it might not, and I'd rather you not wait and have more of a problem. I'd rather you get it looked at early and get it fixed if something needs to be fixed. But it can absolutely be normal operation. Remember, the DSGs, whether they're dry clutch or wet clutch, are basically manual transmissions that are automatically controlled. I did the video with Jason, I'll try and link that one up, where we take a DSG apart and it's manual gear sets. So it is a manual transmission that has like a little tiny automatic clutch pack at the front of it. That replaces the clutch that a manual transmission would have, so the car can control it automatically. So that little bit of hesitation could absolutely be normal. I'm kind of used to it by now, all up until the point where you get in really bad stop and go traffic, then that kind of tweaks me, but that's just a characteristic of the transmission. So a slight awkwardness, I won't even call it a hesitation, kind of awkwardness from going from a stop is a little bit normal, but I would rather you get it looked at and have it checked by the dealership and make sure that there's nothing wrong with it. Ask them maybe if you could drive another one and see what that one does and compare yours to that one. And if that one's different or they're the same, at least you'll know. And it sounds like you've got a really good way to avoid having that awkwardness at the beginning of taking off from a stop. But yeah, man, they're like a little quirky, but they're not horrible. They're so much better than they used to be back in the late 2000s, 07, 08, 09. They were awful. I don't want to say they were awful, but they were pretty bad then. We had recalls on the mech units. Even now we're still putting a handful of clutch packs in, not like we used to, but they are still failing. So slight hesitation, I wouldn't sweat it. But since you're concerned about it, I would definitely take it in and have the dealership tell you, yeah, it's good, or no, it's not. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. If you have any questions or comments, you know what to do. Hey, if you like this video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. I always appreciate that. You can also subscribe on YouTube or on the blog at humblemechanic.com. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course on Snapchat. All right, guys, hey, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Drink of the day. Drink of the day is coffee because it is 4:49 a.m. This is a up early 4:49, not a still up from last night. So coffee might be the trick either way, but coffee.